Okay, students, the next topic which we are going to start in economics is movement of the demand curve. So make your mind clear. So this should be very clear in your mind. That is, there is a difference between the movement along the demand curve and movement of the demand curve. In earlier lectures, we have learned about the movement along the demand curve. So the next lecture, which is going to be started now, is movement of the demand. So concentrate yourself now. In practice, many factors that affect demand other than price can and do change. So the point to remember in the first line is many factors that affect demand other than price, other than can and do change. The factors that affect demand are referred to as conditions of the demand or the non-price determinants. So if other than price, the factors which we are going to discuss now are called non-price determinants, and the factors which are relevant, which are related to price, are called price determinants. So, and a change in any of these will result in a complete shift of the whole demand curve. So we will discuss now how, but first we are going to discuss the factors. Here are the main factors to consider. Note we consider these in isolation, that citrus variables. These are not the only factors that affect demand. So the thing which you should keep in your mind is when we are discussing about a factor, we have to discuss that factor alone in isolation. That is actually called citrus variables. And the factors which affect the demand curve are: number one, income. This is actually price factor. Number two, price of another commodity, complements and substitutes. This is also price factor. Advertising, this is also price factor. Next factor is government policy. This is non-price factor. Population changes, this is also non-price factor. Seasonal changes, this is also non-price factor. And number seven, taste and fashions, this is also non-price factors. Any change in any change in any of these factors will inevitably affect demand for a good or service at a particular price. Changes in the conditions of the demand, that is factors affecting demand, will lead to shift in the demand curve. And now we will discuss one by one the factors in detail. Okay, now we are going to check, we are going to read the effect of the change in income on the demand curve. So concentrate now. An increase in income usually shifts the demand curve for the normal goods and services outwards to the right, as we can see in figure 3.4. So here is the figure 3.4. This was the original demand of the commodity, but when income is increased in a particular area, price is fixed of the good is, but the income is increased, so the demand for the commodity will be increased, so demand curve will move to the right. Due to an increase in income, the quantity demanded for each price level increase. So for each price on the OP axis, so here is OP axis, and this is OQ axis. This is price, this is quantity. So the respective initial quantity on the OQ axis as related through the DD demand curve increase, leading to a shift of the demand curve to the right from DD to DD1. So this was the original demand curve and this is the new demand curve. So this is normally seen. This is the normal case. When the person's income increases, normally the quantity they will purchase now more, so the demand for the commodities are normally increased when the income is increased. A reduction in the income which reduces the quantity demanded for each price level usually shifts the demand curve inwards to the left, as seen in figure 3.5. So this is also seen, that is the reverse case of the previous one. If the income decreases, normally the person require less things now, so the demand for the things which they have purchased earlier will be less because the income is decreased. So the this is the original demand curve. If the income is decreased, the demand curve will move to the left. So inward shift of the demand curve. A good or service for which demand increases as income increases is known as normal goods. So this is the definition of the normal goods. A good or service for which demand increases as the income increases is known as normal goods. There are two exceptions where an increase in income does not increase the demand, does not shift the demand curve. So now we are going to discuss the two special cases in which even if the income is increased, the demanded quantity will not be increased. Demand for the commodity will not be increased. So we are going to discuss two special cases. One, if the proportion of your income spent on the good is very small, then an increase in the income may have no effect on your demand. So the first point is, if your proportion of your income spent on the good is very small, for example, salt. No matter how much your income increases, if your consumption of the salt is only a very small proportion of your income, that is 0.06%, then you would not increase your demand for the salt. So this is the first case. If the proportion of your income spent on the good is very small, then the demand for that quantity will not be increased even if the income is increased. And the next case is if the good is in question is an inferior good. An inferior good is a good or service for which demand will actually fall following an increase in income. Increase in real income causes some people to buy less of these goods. Examples are here. In Western Europe and North America, there has been a serious decline in the demand for the public transport as incomes have risen and more people have been able to afford the motor cars. So this is again very understandable case, because if the income is increasing of a person and who is actually using the local transport now, if the income is increased now and if the person can afford the motor car for himself or herself now, he will actually use the local transport less. So the use of the commodity or the service will get fall in case of the inferior goods. Here is another example. Black and white television sets are being replaced by color television sets. So if the income is increased, the person will definitely purchase more advanced technology in the case of the television sets. If they are having black and white sets right now, and if the income is increased and if they can afford the LCDs now, so they will purchase color LCDs, more modern LCDs. So the demand for the black and white television will get less. So this is another case. So two cases we have discussed. If the proportion of your income is very less as compared to is very less on the product, the demand for the commodity will not rise even if the income is increased. And second case is if the product is an inferior good or service, so the use for the product and service will even fall if the income is increased. The next point which we are going to discuss in this topic in this lecture is the change in the price of the similar, substitute, that are actually the names of the same thing. Similar or substitute are same things, or related and complements are same thing. So we are going to discuss the change in the price of the similar or related goods. So now first thing is similar goods, that is called substitutes. So substitute goods are the goods that can be used instead of the other goods for the same purpose and therefore are in competitive demand. If the price of the good A is increases, demand for the good B is increases. If the price of the good A falls, demand for the good B is fall. So here is an example that will make your concepts more clearer. So concentrate yourself. Gas and electricity are actually the substitutes of each other, because we can run our fans, our television sets, our electrical appliances on electricity and as well as on gas. So gas and electricity are substitutes for each other for cooking. Likewise, margarine and butter are substitutes of each other. Likewise, transport taxi and personal cars are substitutes for each other. And so as the orange juice and grapefruit juice and coffee and black tea are also substitutes of each other. So try to understand, if the price of the margarine is increasing, then the demand for the butter will be increased, because the price of the margarine is increasing. And at the same time, let's suppose the price of the butter remains same, but when we compare the prices of the two things, we will feel that the price of the butter is now less for us as compared to the margarine, because the prices of the margarine are increasing. So if the price of the one good, so if the first point is, if the two things are substitutes of each other, and if the price of one thing is increasing, demand for the other thing will be increased, which is the substitute of that good. Likewise, taxi and personal car, gas and electricity. These are some examples of substitute things. A particular situation is when we have substitute brands, the same goods produced by different companies. For example, Pepsi and Coca-Cola, Motorola and Mobile and Nokia Mobile, Almarai milk and Lecnor milk, Lure Park butter and Wire butter. So these are the substitutes of each other. So if the price of the Pepsi is increasing, demand for the Coca-Cola will be increased. And if the price of Pepsi is decreasing, the demand for the Coca-Cola will be decreased. If a good A and B are substitutes in competitive demand, then they compete directly for consumers' money. An increase in the price of the good A lead to an increase in the demand for the good B, the price of which stays unchanged. But because of the increase in the price of A, it becomes relatively cheaper, therefore more demanded. So this is the point which is given in purple color, the price of which stays unchanged. But because of the increase in the price of A, it becomes relatively cheaper, therefore more demanded, causing an outward shift of the demand curve for good B as in 3.4. So definitely, if the demand is increased, the demand curve will move to the right, and if the demand is decreasing, demand curve will move to the left. So this is DD is the original curve, and D1 is the new demand. And in this case, DD is the original curve, demand curve, and if the demand for the commodity is increasing, DD1 will be the new demand curve that will move to the right. A price in the price, a fall in the price of A leads to fall in the demand for B. The price of B remains unchanged, but it becomes relatively more expensive than A as the price of A fell. So demand for B will diminish, causing an inward shift of the demand curve for the good B. So the simple thing is, don't confuse yourself. If two things are substitutes of each other, for example, Pepsi and Coca-Cola are substitutes of each other. If the price of the Pepsi is increasing and the price of the Coke is remain unchanged, then as a customer, we will feel the price of the Coke relatively less as compared to the price of the Pepsi. So if the price of the Pepsi is increasing, demand for the Coke will be increased. And if the price of the Pepsi is decreasing, likewise, if the price of the Coke is unchanged, then we will feel the price of the Coke will be higher, relatively higher for us as compared to Pepsi. So if the price of the Pepsi is decreasing, the demand for the Coke will be less. So this is the actual point. So conclusion is, if a change in the price increases or decreases of one good causes a shift in the demand for the other good in the same direction as the price change. It means if the price is increasing, like the demand will be increased of the other product. And if the price is decreasing of one product, the demand for the other product will be less. Then the two goods can be considered supplements. Okay, Betty, the next topic which we are going to discuss is the complements. So these are also called related goods. Complements are the things which are actually necessary for each other. Without one thing, you cannot use the other thing. For example, rackets and shuttles are complements of each other. If we want to play badminton, without shuttles, we cannot play badminton only with rackets, and without rackets we cannot play badminton only with shuttles. So these are the complements, and here are examples: DVD players and DVDs, video recorders and videotapes, cars and gas and oil, badminton rackets and shuttles and nets, printers and printer cartridges, computers and computer software applications. So these are the some examples of complements. So now we are going to check to read the effect of the things which are complements of each other. So which are the point to understand? This is very simple. For example, if we take the example of the racket and badminton, if the price of badminton is increasing, definitely the demand for the rackets will get less, and at the same time the demand for the shuttles will also get less because shuttles are useless without rackets. So if the price of the rackets are increasing, demand for the shuttles will get less, and if the price of the rackets are decreasing, because of which rackets will be in more demand, and due to this shuttles will be in more demand. So if the prices of rackets are decreasing, the demand for the shuttles will get more. If the price of the rackets are increasing, the demand for the shuttle will get less. So this is the point which we are going to discuss now. If goods A and B are complements in joint demand, then they are used in conjunction with each other. If the price of good A increases, demand for the good B falls. If the price of the good A falls, demand for the good B increases. So this is the line which is in purple, is actually the bottom line of the complements. Note that in both cases the price of the good B has not changed. The change in the demand for good B has been brought about by an decrease in the price of its complement A. This behavior makes sense because if the price of the good A increases, then you cannot buy the same quantities, you will buy less. The necessary quantities of the other good, the complementary good B, without which you cannot use good A. So because they are necessary for each other, will not be as high, so demand for the good B will fall. The relationship is also true the other way around. For example, as long as the computers were big, heavy and expensive, the demand for the software application was extremely reduced because only a few people can purchase the computers. So the demand for the computer was less. That's why the software applications were also in less demand. Only wealthy companies could afford to buy a computer which was the size of the room. When the PCs started to become cheaper, the demand for the various software applications for businesses and for home entertainment alike kept on increasing. And here is the conclusion. If a change in the price, increase or decrease of one good causes a shift in the demand for the other good in the opposite direction as the price change, then the two goods can be considered complements. The next point which we are going to discuss in this topic is the effect of the advertising on the demand. So concentrate yourself. Advertising is a way of promoting goods and services which employs communicating the qualities and the expected benefits of the products to a high number of the people through the use of the TVs, magazines, newspapers, billboards, etc. So this is the purpose of the advertising normally. But at the same time, beta, try to understand publicity is not always positive for a particular product. It may be a positive, it may be a negative. For example, if you are promoting a product, definitely it will be called positive advertising. But if you are trying to discourage people to buy a particular product, that advertising will be called negative advertising. For example, the advertising which normally comes on TVs for the cigarettes, for the wines. So this is called normally that kind of a publicity is called negative publicity, negative advertisement, because the purpose of the advertisement is to discourage the people from buying cigarettes. So now we are going to read. Positive advertising aims to determine a good attitude towards the product, to influence people's taste towards buying it, and so shift the demand curve for the good towards outwards. Dairy Farmers Association in Western world continuously advertise for milk in order to keep demand up. So this is the example. Dairy Farmers Association advertising for milk in order to keep demand up. This is positive advertising. And now we are going to read the negative advertising. For example, a report or bad press or a dissuasive commercial, smoking is not good for health. So smoking is not good for health. This is negative advertising for cigarettes. Can shift the demand curve of the good inward. If consumers reduce the quantities they buy, even without a change in the price, government in most countries advertise against smoking and illegal substances in order to reduce demand. So this is the effect of the advertising on the demand. The next point which we are going to discuss is the effect of the government policy legislation on the demand. Government policy is constantly changing. Various initiatives that are introduced often affect demand for either directly or indirectly. Examples to understand is in 2001, the Labour government announced plans to rejuvenate the public transport system in the UK. So in this example, government is trying to promote public transport system through government policy legislation. This was due to the evidence that pollution and congestion level were growing rapidly due to the high usage of the personal vehicles. The government was hoping to shift the public transport demand curve outwards to the right. So when the public policy is for the public transport, the government policy is for the public transport, so definitely the demand for the public transport will be increased and the demand curve for the public transport will move outwards to the right. And other example is here in 2000 and 2001 saw a shortage of the teachers in UK. The government offered incentives and bursaries to trainee teachers in an effort to try to increase the demand for the teaching degree. So when government is offering incentives and bursaries, definitely the demand of the teachers will be increased and the demand curve will move to the right. The next point which we are going to discuss is the effect of the population and age distribution on demand. An aging population will demand different goods and services to those demanded by the young population. So definitely there is a difference between the demands of the aging population and the young population. As the population ages and we get fewer infants, demand for the infant products, that is diaper, will fall because the population of the infants is very less in a particular population. So the demand for the diapers will fall. Similarly, an increase in the overall size of the population will increase demand for the goods and services. So this is the effect of the population and age distribution on the demand. The next point which we are going to discuss is the effect of the seasonal factors on the demand. The demand for the ice cream and swimming costumes increases in summer. So this is the effect of seasonal factors on demand. So in summer, the demand for the ice cream and swimming costumes will be increased, and fall in the winters. Many goods and services are only demanded at a particular time of the year, or the demand increases considerably. For example, the demand increases for flowers and presents for special moments in the year, on Mother's Day, on Valentine's Day, on Eid. So this is the effect of the seasonal factors on the demand. The next point is the effect of the taste and fashions on the demand. Taste and fashion change all the time, some more frequently than others do. This can cause the demand curve to shift either way. For example, people's taste switch from video cassettes and audio tapes to DVDs players and mini disc players due to the factors such as the better quality and convenience. So these are the actually things which are actually changing the taste and fashion of the people: better quality and convenience. So people are purchasing now less video cassette and DVDs as compared to they are moving to DVD players because they are having better quality and convenience. This causes the demand curve for products to shift to right. However, it is important to remember that as well as commodities becoming fashionable, they can also become unfashionable, thus shifting the demand curve to the left inward. Another example is here. In 1980s, the roller skates and skateboards were very popular in the younger generation. However, as the taste and fashion change, their popularity decreased, and so the demand curve shifts inward. So this is the negative example of the taste and fashions. Here are some points to remember. First point is an increase in the demand due to change in non-price determinant cause a shift of the demand curve to the right. An increase in quantity demanded due to fall in price causes a downward movement along the demand curve. So this is the downward movement and change of the demand curve. So this is the difference. A fall in demand at the same price level due to change in non-price determinants causes a shift of the demand curve to the left. Here the price curve is shifted, but in this case a fall in the quantity demanded due to increase in price causes an upward movement along the demand curve. So these are the points.